Welcome back. My name is Taylor from Bishbox Studio, and welcome to the first video in a new series that we're dubbing Plant Profiles. Today we're going to be talking about one of the plants that I think doesn't get enough credit, where credit is due. It's a really easy plant, and it goes well in both low-tech and high-tech aquariums. This plant is Dwarf Sagittaria, or Dwarf Sag, what we call it for short. Now, before we get started, just let me tell you, this tank right here isn't in the best of shape. It's actually coming down for reasons we'll explain in another video. But I wanted to shoot this video before I root the plants out. Dwarf Sagittaria is a hardy, grass-like aquatic plant that is really ideal for foreground for many beginners and advanced people. It relies on typically low to moderate lighting. You want to feed the roots with something like root tabs or aqua soil, like in this tank that you see before you. And it's really flexible when it comes to water parameters. Its basic water parameters are temperature of about 68 to 84, with a pH of around 6 to 8, a GH anywhere between 2 degrees to 15 degrees, and those are kind of the basics. You can grow it in aqua soil, gravel, sand. I've seen it grow everywhere. Let's talk about the beginner way and when you grow it in low light. When you grow it in low light, it tends to get tall, but like I said, you can still trim it. It can take up anywhere between 6 months to a year to fully carve it out, depending on the size of your tank and how much you're starting out with. But if you're patient, you will be rewarded. It is mostly a root feeder, so you're going to need root tabs of some sort or an aquatic soil, or you could even use dirt if you really wanted to. It works great with dirt. And it's probably one of my number one recommendations if you're starting out in foreground plants and you really want to carpet and this is your first time and you don't have CO2, because it works. It just works. It's the magic foreground plant is what I like to call it. Now let's go into a bit of the more complex things about this plant. Now remember I said foreground, that's usually what most people buy it for, but this plant is adaptable. If you give it low light, somewhere between 20 to 30, maybe 40 par, it can grow really tall, maybe about 10 to 12, maybe even 14 inches, and literally look like Vallisneria, which is great. You can also grow it short if you give it more light and nutrients. There's also a third way to achieve a short carpet with not so much light, and that is what I like to refer to as training. Training is basically what we're going to do is take scissors, cut it down to where we want it to be, and we continually trim it over and over and over again. And eventually it gets the idea, oh, I'm only supposed to grow this tall or that tall. Now, Sagittaria can get lazy after a period of time, in which case it kind of loses its training and you have to train it again. But that typically happens once or twice a year. Results may vary. Just make sure you trim it how tall you want it to be whenever you see it reach past that point, and you'll be fine. Now let's talk about Dwarf Sagittaria when it grows under high light and CO2. With high light and CO2, it can grow fast. Just remember, you don't want the light too high, because that just increases its need for nutrients. So I would suggest capping it around 60 par for that, but it will still grow amazing, and it will be a lot denser and bushier. So that's one of the benefits of using medium light and CO2. Now let's talk about propagation. If you just saw earlier, you saw how at the bottom of the tank the roots were digging into the substrate and spreading through runners and then popping out the top. That's how you propagate it. As it grows, it sends out runners underneath the substrate, and it just pops out. Unlike other easy carpeting plants like, say, dwarf chainsword, which typically sends runners over the top of the substrate, this one does it under. Now, I'm not saying this one is better or worse, it's just a matter of preference. What you want to do is you want to cut those runners, and then you can move the plant around and double it. Say you only have half the tank filled up, you just cut the runners, take the piece that you just cut and move it over, and it will take a couple weeks or a few days depending on if you're using CO2 or not, and then it will adapt and start growing again, and you just keep repeating the process. Or you can just leave it and let it spread and grow like wildfire. Now, just be aware that if you do cut the runner, you want to cut down the middle of the runner and not at the very edge, because when you want to replant it somewhere else, you want some of that runner to hold it down into the substrate, because you do not want to bury the crown, and the crown is typically where the runner ends and the leaf blade begins at the very bottom. So now, where do we buy it? Well, this plant is very widely available. You can find it in most big box pet stores like Petco or PetSmart, and you can often find it in local fish stores if you're near any. And if not, well, you can always buy it online. I know a lot of retailers that carry it because it's a simple plant and it does quite well. Just remember, when you buy it, it's typically immersed grown, and it'll need to adapt into submerged form. In a low-tech tank with low light, that can take a couple weeks, and you might notice some dieback in the meantime. Just don't panic and give it time. In high-tech tanks with CO2 and light, that time can be shortened quite a bit, but it really depends on the tank. Now, if you're going to be buying this plant in person, I highly recommend you look carefully at it. It's very common to run into plants that are somewhat dead at a pet store or a local fish store. So what you want to look for is you want to look for white roots at the bottom of the pot, or you can also buy it in a tissue culture, but I recommend just buying it in a pot. It's a lot cheaper. Many places also just sell it in bundles, which are like $2 to $3 a piece, and you can get a lot of it and fill up a big tank with it for a fairly good price. Personally, Dwarf Sagittaria is one of my favorites. It's easy, it's underappreciated, it's adaptable, and it just grows. It's one of my top recommendations for a beginner, especially if you're new to foreground plants. It works in both low-tech and high-tech, low light and medium light. Just do be aware, it does a bit better in medium light, but it's not really necessary. It can grow in low light as well, typically around anywhere between 20 to 50 par. So just about any light can grow it. The best part, CO2 is optional. You don't really need it. Thank you very much for joining me here today and for viewing this video. And I really hope today you learned something. Give me a like and a comment, subscribe, and tell me what was your first foreground plant and what are your favorites. Thanks for watching. My name is Taylor from Fish Talk Studio. Have a good night.